Hi, and welcome to Deep Leadership. I'm your host, John Rennie. Well, the purpose of this show is to build a world with better bosses, and we do that by learning from the greatest minds in leadership today. Whether you're new to leadership or a seasoned pro, you're going to get practical information to help you lead with confidence. Today, we're talking about what separates good leaders from great ones, especially when growth is fast and pressure is high. I sat down with entrepreneur, best-selling author, and executive coach Patrick Thean to better understand high growth leadership. In this episode, Patrick shares 7 practices that transformed his first startup into a massive success and has guided leaders ever since. From building world-class teams to making your culture a competitive advantage, this conversation is packed with decades of hard-earned wisdom. If you want to level up your leadership and enjoy the journey along the way, don't miss this important episode. So, are you ready to dive in? Let's get started. Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Patrick Thean. Patrick is an international speaker, CEO, coach, and serial entrepreneur whose mission is to help leaders build great companies and achieve their dreams. Patrick grew his first company to number 151 on the Inc. 500 list. And since then, he's been on a mission to share his wisdom with CEOs worldwide, guiding them through the complexities of leadership and high growth success. Patrick is a best-selling author, and his latest book is called The Journey to CEO Success: 7 Practices for High Growth Leadership. Now, this book distills over 20 years of his executive coaching experience, which offers battle-tested strategies on the right leadership practices, how to build world-class teams, and how to turn company culture into a competitive advantage. And I'm excited to have him on the show to learn from his leadership experience. So, Patrick, welcome to the show.
Hey, John, thank you so much for inviting me. It's great to be here. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, it's great to meet you. And I'm excited to talk about this book and your experiences along the way. So before we get started, tell us a little bit about this book that you've written.
Yeah.
It's called The Journey to CEO Success. Tell us a little bit about the origin story of how this book came about.
So, after I sold my first company, I'm in North Carolina, I'm in Charlotte, and that was 1997, 1998. And not a lot of tech companies have nice exits here in Charlotte. So I met a lot of entrepreneurs to give back to my community. I actually helped to start the Entrepreneurs Organization Charlotte chapter. And that's how I met Michael Prager. Michael Prager joined EO, and then he asked me to help him with his concept, his company. And before I knew it, I started coaching him. Now that relationship with Michael Prager and Avid Exchange is now 25 years old.
Mm.
So it's been a fantastic journey. And this book came about. It's my 3rd book actually. And Michael said, "Hey Patrick, why don't we do something together?" I said, "It's a great idea." And I suggested to him that we write a book together. And he said, "Okay, why don't we distill all the things that you and I have been through in the 25 years journey of life that we've been on." And that kind of was the starting point of this book. So I would say that, it's titled, The Journey to CEO Success. But I would say that these are principles, these 7 practices are good for all leaders, whether you're a CEO, a senior executive, a entrepreneur, a manager of a department. These practices will help you be a much better leader.
That's fantastic. And again, before we press record, I get my hats off to you for coaching Michael for 25 years. That's amazing. And I'm sure through those years, you had a lot of ups and downs, and he's had a lot of challenges. So you're kind of distilling, 25 years of this journey together. Can you tell us a little bit about these 7 practices?
Sure.
What are they, and why are they so critical for
Yeah.
high growth leadership?
So over the 25 years, I've coached a lot of CEOs, and I've had very long relationships, actually. Michael is 25 years, I think. Uh, I've coached people for 15 years, 10 years, 12 years. And so we really said, hey, how do we figure this out? So the 7 practices come from the following place. First, I believe you really should work on yourself.
Mm.
I believe that if you don't work on yourself, I'm sorry, you don't deserve to work on anybody else. So the first 2 practices is about being curious and leveling up. Leveling up. So those are the first 2 is about yourself. Then the next 2 is I believe you should be faithful with what you've been given, which means you need to execute well the opportunities you have. And the next two are about one, establishing your early warning system. And the next one is achieving full alignment with your team. Because as your company grows, you have a team. And really, if your team isn't performing well, they're not really achieving alignment and therefore they can't perform well. So three and four is about being faithful with what you've been given and executing well. And after that, I think you really need to make sure that you can create the right environment so that the people who work with you, your team members, they can succeed as well. So to do that, you want to make sure your culture is strong. And if your culture is strong, you can use that as your competitive advantage. And you want to build a strong people ecosystem. And lastly, number seven, if you get those things, then focus on your core customer. A lot of people build strategies, but forget that they're here to serve the needs of the customer. And then
Mm.
even within the customer base, there's not all customers are created equal. Some customers really uh, deserve, frankly, much more attention, your products, everything you want to build around them. This is not a concept I came up with, this last one. It's really from Peter Drucker, but I kind of modified it and borrowed it from him. And he calls it your primary customer. My core customer is slightly different, but it was really inspired by Peter Drucker. So I really believe that your strategies need to be built around the right customer. And I call that your core customer. So those are the seven practices, be curious, level up, establish an early warning system, achieve full alignment, make culture a competitive advantage, build a strong people ecosystem, and focus on your core customer. So those are the seven practices.
Those make so much sense, and it's interesting. You mentioned, focusing on your core customers. I teach a college course, and today we were doing Amazon. We were kind of digging deep into a case study on Amazon, and their mission statement is to be the most customer centric organization in the world. And it's not about selling books or selling things online. It's
Yes.
about being customer centric. And it's what's interesting is that's driven all the different businesses they've gotten into over the years. But it's always
Yes.
about who are our customers and how can we make life easier for them in terms of acquiring things or services or what have you. So it's interesting that you end with that idea of focusing on your core customers, because again it's Drucker who says that, right? But if you see it in practice, Amazon's a great company that has done that throughout their
By the
whole
way, that's a
career.
really interesting thing you just said. I mean, Amazon created and patented the one click to buy.
Yes.
And I remember that vividly. I was thinking when it came out, I was thinking, big deal.
Yeah.
One click to buy. I mean, come on, man. But it's a big deal. I am a big Amazon customer. Amazon trucks go by my neighborhood every day, and every day I pray that they don't stop because that means we bought something.
Yeah, I love it. It is. I know when we started our company, that was actually, we didn't put it out publicly, but internally we said we want to be Amazon easy. That was the term we used when
Yeah.
we were designing our systems. We want to be Amazon easy because it is one click to buy. It's easy and it's customer centric, and it's about making it easier for your customers. So I love that you have that there. And so many of these are just really important things, and it's clear that this is decades of observing leaders in building businesses. These are the key seven for sure. You were one of the things I was thinking about is you've seen a lot of CEOs, you've seen a lot of leaders. um, what's the difference between CEOs who succeed and those that struggle, especially in the high growth environments?
So I would say, I begin with the first two practices, right? Be curious and level up. And I believe that the more successful leaders, they tend to lead by influence,
Hmm.
not the same thing as consensus, and not the same thing as demanding. Like, hey, you need to do this and do it now. That's like leading by dictatorship and demanding. Consensus is, hey, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And then let's kind of vote on the issue, and then let's make the best decision that all of us came together. But leading by influence is really understanding what you need to achieve, and then helping people understand why they need to get there and what they need to do. So I think you need to lead by influence. You need to know where you want to go, lead by influence. That's one. The second is, I would say, you got to be open and humble, eager
Hmm.
to learn, and ambitious and demanding at the same time. So a lot of these leaders, the successful ones, they understand what I call the power of the A and D. Most of us are victims of, of thinking it's either A or B. I'm either gonna hold you accountable to performance or I'm a nice guy. So we
Mm,
all likely think that if I'm a nice guy, I can't hold you accountable. That's not true. I mean, I can be a nice guy and hold you accountable as well, because if I don't teach you those concepts as a leader, you're not going to succeed down the road in your future.
mm,
So you got to understand the power of the A and D. You got to be open, humble, and ambitious and demanding at the same time. And then lastly, I would say this is part of the humility piece, right? I think you need to be able to be willing to do the work. No job too small, no job too big. I was in my kitchen the other day and I decided to kind of do the dishes that people just left in the sink. Kind of made me mad, but that's fine. I did the dishes and then I stacked them in the dishwasher. And then a couple of my employees came in and they said, "Oh, Patrick, I'm so sorry. Like you shouldn't be doing that. You're my boss. I'm so sorry. Those are my dishes and I should have done them." And I smiled and I said, "First, yes, in the future, please do them. But secondly, this is my house.
yeah.
So I can do the dishes for you occasionally. It's not a problem. And I'm happy to do them. So I like to dispel the concept that, oh my God, you're the boss, you can't take the trash out. No, no job too small, man. And if I can serve you and find opportunities to serve you as a leader, it creates that kind of environment where we have more vulnerability in the space and it creates more trust. So I think those are the things that frankly it works whether you're in a high growth environment or not. But I think in a high growth environment, it's harder because people fool themselves into thinking, I got no time. I got no
Mm,
time. And years ago, I met Stephen Covey, and he really made an impact on me. He had a watch that had a clock, made a watch, and then when you open it, it was a compass. And he said this to me. He said, Patrick, when we're dealing with business stuff, you gotta look at your watch. It's about efficiency. He said, but when you work on people, you flip the watch over. And that's why I have this watch. And there's a compass there because it's all about direction and it takes time. You just need to relax and spend that time with people. So I think sometimes, leaders and CEOs of high growth environments, they buy into the myth that we don't have time, man. We got to move faster. And therefore, I don't have time for you. Well, you have to
mm.
move faster, yes. But actually, you need to make more time for me if you want me to move faster. That's the irony.
I love that. It's so true. I always say leadership is a people business, right? And
Yes.
people need to be led and they
And
need
it's
to
a
feel
full
like they're
contact
part.
sport, right?
It
It's a
is a
full
full
contact
contact
sport.
sport. And
Yeah.
I think you can't lead from an office with a locked door. You've got to be out and about. You've got to have interact with people. And you're right. It sometimes takes a while, right, to get people on board as your mission and things that you're trying to do. And I think that's I love that you bring that up. And I wanted to say too, this idea of, you were talking about humility and being curious and staying humble, but also being fierce and going after the things that are really important in your business. And it reminded me of Jim Collins writing in Good to Great, these level 5 leaders he found that took these companies on these huge improvement and growth operations, and they weren't the high ego CEOs that he expected to find. They were these humble but fierce leaders. So they had personal humility, but they had very much professional will
Right.
to fight over the long term for the success of their businesses. So, and it was not the person that we expected to see leading these companies.
And you got to care. You got to care deeply. And if you care about the people that work with you, they know that you can't fake care.
Mm,
And so, a long time ago, my first job was at Oracle Corporation. Oracle was not that big. They were public. They were, on their way from 200 plus million to 500 million. So they were not that big. They were growing 100% a year. And I was fresh out of school. And my boss, Greg, I remember, I thought I was a hotshot consultant. And in those days, Friday was casual day, come in jeans, but on all the other days you can't come in jeans. And so I was usually at a customer site, but on this particular Wednesday, I was in the office and I thought I was hot shit. So I came in jeans.
mm,
And Greg comes to me and he, in a very nice level voice, he says, "So Patrick, you in jeans today?" I go, "Yeah." Because you know we have a dress code. Yes. I go, yeah, yeah, we have a dress code. He goes, and you know that you shouldn't be wearing jeans on Wednesday. You know that. I go, yeah, yeah, yeah. And he said, so he explained to me, we have customers come in here. That's why we all need to be dressed in our suits and tie, professional attire. And so it's not acceptable that you come to work in jeans on a Wednesday. You can do that on a Friday, but on a Wednesday. You understand it, right? And I nonchalantly was like, yeah, yeah, of course I do, of course I do. But I'm thinking, I'm a superstar, right? I can do whatever I want.
Hmm.
So Greg then looks at me, smiles, and then gets serious and says, so Patrick, now that you fully understand what I'm saying, the next time you come to work in jeans and it's not a Friday, you will be fired.
Hmm.
I was like, my God, what just happened, right? And I was stunned. And Greg gave me time to like go into my brain. And he said, did you hear what I said, Patrick? I'm like, yes. Am I clear enough? I go, yes. I will never wear jeans again other than Friday. And even on Friday, I'm scared to wear jeans now too. So my point though was that Greg taught me something.
Yeah.
He wasn't afraid. He wasn't like, "Oh, you're my superstar consultant. I don't want to, piss you off, make you mad, make you quit." No, it's hey. And by the way, he from that one lesson, he taught me so much about how a boss should be. It's the power of the AND. He was demanding and he cared. He disciplined me, but at the same time, he taught me, right?
Hmm.
He didn't get angry. He didn't yell at me. He didn't shout at me. He just explained to me why it's important and the expectations are such. And by the way, there are consequences of not understanding that. And the consequences are you're going to be fired next time.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
was blown away. But that
Yeah.
lesson I've never forgotten. Greg is a humble guy and taught me lessons that I've taken throughout my career.
Wasn't it true that our actions set the standard for our companies, right? So the things that we ignore now become the norm, or it becomes that's okay, right? if you're
Yes.
if you're if somebody's late to a meeting consistently and the boss never says anything, it's like, okay, well, I guess it's okay to be late, right?
Yes.
And so that
Yeah.
becomes now part of the culture, and it becomes part of your company, the rules and norms within the company. So what we allow to happen now sets the standard is what's acceptable. And I think that we don't realize it. We might say, well, this is, we might write down all the values that we think is important, but really the decisions we make every day are really what
Yes.
sets the values for our companies, right?
Yes, very much so. In the book on culture, I talk about values, but I also wanted to really spend my time in the book on what I call uncommon wisdom. In other words,
Mm,
things that people don't usually see. So there are lots of books on core values, and there's nothing I can teach about that Jim Collins and other great writers haven't really taught. In my book, I talk about the power of understanding that behavior really comes from a combination of core values and mindsets.
mm,
So how you set your mind and your thinking process combined with core values really gives you the right behaviors or the wrong behaviors. And frankly, your working culture is really the behavior. So there are cases where someone could have the right core values but have the wrong mindset or a different mindset, not wrong, but a different mindset than you need. And you can therefore get behavior, and then people behavior that's wrong and for you, and then people tend to say, "Oh, they're not exhibiting the right core values," but actually they are. It's just that they have the wrong mindset. So I'll give you one very quick example. If in a high growth firm, you really have to accept change. Change is happening all the time. So if your mindset is, "I hate change, I hate change,"
mm,
you can ascribe to all the core values. You can be, like for me, one of my core values is no TDC, no thinly disguised contempt, which means you're gonna resolve all your issues today. Don't let it fester, and then I don't really want to work with you, but not talk about it. So we call that no TDC. You could be no TDC and avoid, like, I'm very uncomfortable with change and very uncomfortable with speed. That's a mindset. That's a mindset. So you could actually have no TDC, check, but I'm not good with change. You probably don't belong in my firm if that's your mindset. So so a lot of people don't fully understand it. So that's one of the interesting things I talk about is how the combination of mindsets and core values actually gives you the behavior that you're looking for.
Yeah, I can that makes a lot of sense to me because I think sometimes, especially, CEO running a company, you finally get everything working right and then something changes and it's frustrating, right? But that's what, and so that's a mindset thing. You can either say, okay, well, that's just the way business is, right? Nothing ever
Yes.
stays,
Yeah.
nothing ever stays running consistently at all times. So your mindset could be, okay, well, think the winds have shifted, time to adjust my
Right.
sails, right? And just smile, and this is just normal. Or it's, oh, now I got to go through this whole process again, and so you get discouraged. But the truth of the matter is this is going to be happening every time, and all the
Right.
time. So it's
So,
your
so,
mindset to deal with it
right.
is really important.
Exactly. And oftentimes it's not good or bad, it's what you need. So for my company, for example, I'm encouraging people to the mindset of experimentation. So you can make mistakes. It's okay. I don't
Yeah.
want you to be so perfect because I want us to have a mindset of speed and experimentation. Therefore, I have to accept mistakes, right? Like
Yeah.
if I ask you to take risk and you took a risk and it didn't turn out well, and I say, John, what's wrong with you, man?
Mm,
That's stupid. Okay, well, next time you're not going to take a risk anymore. Patrick wants me to be perfect. So I shared this with a very good friend of mine who's a doctor. And he laughed and he said, so Patrick, the good news that in your business, you make a mistake, nobody dies. He said, in my business, I may make a mistake, someone dies. And I said, wow, doctor, you're right. My mindset, not good for your business. Your business, you don't want to be, you don't want to, hey, does this drug work? Yeah, let's try it. No, you better know. So, yes. So, in his business, the mindset can't be experiment. It's okay to make mistakes. Let's move faster. In his business, it's got to be, we can't make a mistake with this surgery, cut off the wrong arm. Are you crazy? No, we got to get it perfect, got to get it right. So core values can be the same, but the mindset is different for my firm versus his firm. And I think people don't understand that well enough. So we tend to blame everything on the core values. And so we tend to think, oh, they don't have the right values. Now, the good news is that mindsets can be trained and can be
mm.
changed if people understand it. And that's why I think it's important to delineate core values and mindsets.
I love that. I love that. One of the things I wanted to expand on a little bit, this idea that culture can be a competitive advantage. I really like that. I would like to kind of unpack a little bit. How can that be? So we know that the leader is responsible for really establishing and maintaining a company's culture, but how can that be used as a competitive advantage?
Well, you know, I would say the following. I'd say COVID over the last few years, I'm not going to blame anything on COVID. Over the last few years, I think the pendulum swung very much from an employer's market to an employee's market, and then the pendulum has swung somewhat back. But at the same time, you got a whole generation of people that have been emboldened to think that, you know what, their life matters as well.
Mm,
I want balance and things like that. So I would say that at the same time we by the way live in a fantastic country in the US. I mean, the opportunities abound. This is a real abundant country with an abundant economy. Now, what that means is that as your employees understand this, they realize that they have choices. They don't have to work for you. In fact, the world has changed now where a lot of people can work remote. So what that means is I live in Charlotte. I can actually work for a company that is not in Charlotte, therefore opens up my opportunities significantly. So I think that people have grown and now they're looking more. You got to pay them right. I'm not saying you can't pay, you can't be stingy on your pay. You got to pay them what correctly. So you got to pay at least market value. Okay. But after that, though, people are choosing. So people are beginning to choose with their hearts, not
mm,
just their wallets. And I think that if you in this war for talent, you want to really make sure that you attract the right talent, retain the right talent, grow them. And people have asked me, they say, well, Patrick, how do I keep my employees? And I say, actually, your employees aren't pets, buddy. You don't get to keep them. And they go, what? I go, yeah, you don't get to keep them. They get to choose whether they want to stay with you or if they want to leave. Now, if you have that mindset, a mindset shift here, you begin to realize that your employees have choices and they don't like your environment. They don't want to stay with you. So I think that you got to take your culture, be intentional about it, define it, protect it, recruit people that are attracted to your culture. Don't be afraid to say, this is who we are. And some people say, well, I don't want that. That's fine. You don't have to work for me. But this is us. This is who we are. You will attract people. And so you got to be willing to say, it's okay. This place not right for you. It's okay. But this place is right for this person, this person, this person. And those are the people we attract. Now, after you've attracted them, then you got to be consistent in your work culture, which is mindset and core values. You do that, and employees will stay with you. They will choose to stay because you can't keep them if they don't like your environment and things like that. So that's why I think it's a real competitive advantage because of the talent, the war for talent. You want to keep your best talent.
Yeah, I agree with that so much. And I would say, especially for the entrepreneurs who are listening in, you have a small team, right? Especially when you get started and you have a small team, one person could potentially be 10% of your workforce, right? And if they
Yes.
leave, you lose that 10% of your industrial, your company's knowledge, right? Walks out the door. So it's even more important. And that's one of the things that was interesting because I came from 22 years working in large companies and I started my own company and I thought, well, people won't stay with me. I have a small company. I don't have like a way for them to advance. They don't get to travel internationally. They don't, all the things we did at big companies, I can't do in my small company. But yet my people stay. We have this really interesting, fun place to work. And so nobody ever leaves. And so, but I was always struggling to like, how am I going to keep these great people who suddenly came to work for this startup company 9 years ago. And
Yeah.
but it's always been about like I said, like you said, like the culture, making sure that our values are clear, that we have a really good culture, and we strongly protect that culture, and we look for people who kind of fit into that culture. We bring them in, and I think that's kind of been the key for us, at least.
And then you got to throw in a dollop of love. You
You
got to
know, I
throw in a
love
dollop of
I
love,
love that
right?
you say that. I love that you say
Yeah.
that. A bunch of my employees went to lunch today, and they all were going heading out the door, and they looked at me and they said, "You coming?" I'm like, and I thought, well, they don't need to have the boss bugging them, but I'm like, you know what? Everybody was going. I said I went, and we laughed for the entire lunchtime. And one of my former employees who comes in from time to time, he's retired now. He said I said I have so much fun coming in and just hearing those conversations and the laughter. He says I miss coming in every day because of
Yeah.
that. And
You
uh
know,
and
you know,
and
you
that was
spend,
definitely love in there,
yeah, we spend about 70% of our waking hours at work. Now,
Yeah.
when I say at work, I don't care whether it's remote work or physical in-office work, but that means you are with the people you work with 70% of your waking life.
Hmm.
My goodness, if you don't like where you are, you should leave.
Yes.
And so therefore, if you love on your folks, I learned a long time ago. One of my mentors, he one of my the first person that coached me, one of my mentors years ago, he said to me when I was running my second business, he said, Patrick, you need to come work for me. I said, Richard, I have a company to run. He goes, no, no, after you stole this one, you come work for me. And I said, dude, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm not going to come work for you. He goes, no, no, you got it, you got it. And he was insistent. He said, Patrick, I'm 50 some years old, and I've realized, took me 50 years to figure this out, but I only want to work with people I love.
Mm,
And he said, I don't want to work with anybody else. Life is too short. And so you are an amazing guy, Patrick, and you need to at least consider, after you've done with this project, you need to at least consider, give me a call, give me a chance. I tell you, man, I was like, I promised him I would call him and give him a chance. Like I went from I'm an entrepreneur, I'm not gonna to yeah, you know why? Because I really liked Richard.
yeah.
He really helped me at Medicis in my dire time of need. Actually, it's the prologue of the book. I tell my own story about how I got coached for the very first time, and this man helped save my company. And
Mm,
so there is the emotional piece, right? That's that love and care piece that you can't you can't replicate. It's a
yeah.
relationship. So, we live in a P2P world. We would all be good to remember that no matter what technology is around us, AI and all this wonderful stuff, we still live in a people to people world, P2P
Yeah.
world. And therefore, these are relationships. And if you love on your folks, give them the culture that they enjoy. Don't be afraid to ask folks that don't make sense in your firm to move on. And by the way, I always tell myself and I tell them that look, you're going to spend 70% of your life working awake life in a company. Uh, why do you want to hang out with me if you're having such a bad time? I'm going to free up your future so that you can go find a great place to work. So it cuts both ways. If I don't enjoy working with you, you probably don't enjoy seeing my face every day either. I mean, it kind of cuts both ways, you know?
Yeah.
So I think everyone deserves to have the right place where they can flourish and enjoy their journey because it's a journey. And before you know it, I turned 60 last year. So, like suddenly before I know it, I'm 60. And where did all those years go? When I look back, I spent most of those years with people I loved and enjoyed working with, and it's been a great journey.
I love that. I love that. I'm 57 too, and I've had the same way. The last 9 years have been phenomenal. So I'm glad I made the shift to starting my own business for sure. It's been a lot of fun. Well, this has been fantastic, Patrick. I really do encourage listeners to take a look at this book, The Journey to CEO Success. But what final message, Patrick, would you like to leave with our listeners?
I kind of said it already, so I'll reemphasize it. I would like everyone to think about their journey and enjoy your journey
Mm.
because you are the only one that can decide if you're having a great journey. And too many of us I use the word choose to become victims versus owners. I think you got to own your life, own your career, own your journey, and enjoy it. Because before you know it, buddies, you're going to be 60 like me. So enjoy your journey and surround
I
yourself with the right people so you can do that.
I love that. I love that. I love that. Enjoy your journey. Yeah, because it suddenly you find yourself in your late 50s or 60s, and you're like, it goes pretty quick. So fantastic. Life is short. So enjoy what you're doing. That's fantastic advice. Patrick, how can our listeners find out more about you, all your books, and your company?
Yeah, so come to patrickthean.com. It's my name, PatrickThean.com, and I'll take you to the right place where we have books, we have things, we have tools that we can help you. And I've got a blog that it would be helpful to you. And I've got a podcast also that is, and to help people enjoy the journey. It's the CEO Journey to Success podcast. So thank you very much for having me, and I hope that I can be helpful to your audience.
Very good. Now you've been very helpful to us so far, and listeners, we're gonna have links to the show notes for all of Patrick's resources. Highly encourage if there's something in what he's talked about today that really stood out, something you're really curious about, please reach out to Patrick. He's the expert. That's why we have him on the show. Reach out to him, ask him some questions. Get this book. It's called The Journey to CEO Success. We'll have the link in the show notes here below. So go ahead and click that link, get that book and get yourself on a path. These are these seven ways that you can become a great leader in a high growth or any growth business. This is what you need to focus on. All of those, I've been doing this for 30 years. All those fit exactly in my brain too, as far as the ways to be successful as a leader. So very powerful stuff. So I encourage you to take a look at all of Patrick's resources, and we'll have the links in the show notes. Patrick, thank you for coming on the show, and thank you for sharing everything with us today.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that is it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.